it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I have read recently. So first of all, it's been forever since I filmed in this setup. Like, I don't like standing for videos because it just seems like so much effort, but I also do like standing for videos, so that's a bit of a conundrum. But I decided to film in this setup today, and I'm really happy about it because I do love the background. This is like my favorite background to film with, especially with like the candle in the background, you know, setting the ambiance and such. It's fun. It's a mood. But this recent reads video is essentially going to be an October wrap up because all of the books that I have to talk about today are spooky, creepy, and Halloweeny in some sort of way. So I don't like Halloween. I know it's not for me. I don't like scary things, but I do like reading things that kind of set the tone for the Halloween season, and I felt like I did so badly with keeping up with my fall TBR, but I actually read half of the books that were on my fall TBR, so that's pretty good. And a lot of them I read in October, and I got to like most of the ones that I really wanted to get to, so I'm very proud of myself. Go me! So there is one book that I've read recently that wasn't particularly spooky, so I'm actually going to include that book in my next recent reads video, which will be coming, I don't know when, but hopefully I read enough to have it out soon. But as per usual for my recent reads video, I'm not going to be spoiling these books. I'm going to be giving my spoiler-free little mini review, and I will have timestamps in the description box down below in case there was a particular book you were looking to hear about. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first book that I have to talk about today is Capturing the Devil by Kerri Maniscalco. So this is the fourth book and the final book of the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. That is one of my favorite series. I loved it so much, and the conclusion was very bittersweet. I'm sad that it's over, but also so glad that I got the chance to read it. So I'm not really going to be giving you a summary for this book as it is the final book, but Stalking Jack the Ripper is kind of a romantic mystery series that is set in Victorian times, and it's really good. You follow Audrey Rose, who she's a very driven woman, and she is fascinated by forensics and studying that, but she's living in a time where she's not really allowed to study that, and she has her love interest, Thomas Cresswell, who is like the ultimate book boyfriend, and together they go on all sorts of different adventures. Each book is set in a different place. This book was set in America, and you follow them as they are sorting out different murder mysteries, so really fun and perfect for the fall season. I listened to this book on audiobook as I did with the rest of the series, and it was a fantastic conclusion. I thought it was very well done. However, it did kind of veer in a different direction than the previous books. I will say the second book, what's it even called? Hunting Prince Dracula. Wow. That one is still my favorite out of the series. That one is set in Romania, and it was just very good. I loved that one. And Escaping from Houdini is my least favorite. This one would fall in like the number 3 spot for me in terms of like my liking of them. What I think happened in the later books is it started veering more toward the romance, which I didn't necessarily mind because that is something that I was pretty invested in, but this book in particular was super romance heavy. I felt like the romance was the A plot and the murder mystery ended up being the B plot, and I kind of forgot that there was even a murder mystery going on at times, but I liked the fact that the romance was given precedence because I didn't like how the romance went in the previous book. I felt like there were a lot of issues with it there, so I think that this definitely fixed those issues. Now, the romance plotline did kind of give me Jane Eyre vibes in a way, and if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. If you've read both of the books, then you definitely know what I'm talking about. So that was very interesting to read about. I think there was a lot of tension, and the romance was overall very well done. The murder mystery was well done as well. It just wasn't really the storyline that I was super invested in. Like I mentioned, this book is set in America, so it's set in Chicago, and it's actually set at the World's Fair, which was an interesting setting to be in. I liked the kind of whimsy that brought to the story, so I felt like the atmosphere was very well done. Once again, I think Kerri Maniscalco does a great job of that, and I think it wrapped things up nicely. I feel satisfied with the conclusion that I got, and I think that it ended where it should have ended. So overall, I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars, maybe a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm not too sure on my rating. Next, I finally finished Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. Now, I say finally finished because I had started the audiobook at one point, and the audiobook was super confusing, so I put it down, but now I finally finally actually physically read it and really enjoyed it too. Truly Devious is once again a murder mystery that is set at Ellingham Academy, and Ellingham Academy is this boarding school that is set in Vermont in like the middle of this mountain, and no one can really get to it, and it was founded by this tycoon who made this school to be like kind of a labyrinth. There's all sorts of secret passages and winding roads, and there are things that he doesn't even know about. It was made to be a place where some of the most prestigious minds could go and study without having to worry about the cost of tuition. But it's not all fun and games at Ellingham Academy, because shortly after opening, the founder's wife and daughter are actually kidnapped, and there's a note left behind that has this riddle on it signed by the pseudonym Truly Devious. Now that all took place in 1930. Fast forward to modern day, when Stevie Bell is a true crime aficionado who is accepted to Ellingham Academy and is going, and she has the mission of trying to solve this cold case that no one was ever able to solve. But before she can even try to solve it, it happens again. Dun dun dun! So this book features dual timelines. You get the 1930s timeline, but it's mostly focused on the modern day timeline, and I will say both of them I think were very well done. I liked how it was interwoven, but the 1930s timeline interested me a little bit more, and I think that's just a personal preference thing where I really like historical fiction and the setting was fascinating, but the setting in modern day was also fascinating. Like Ellingham Academy, I just built it up in my mind to be this very wild place with all these like secret passages and stuff, and I think that's such a fascinating setting for a murder mystery. It's just so cool. This was kind of set up to be a puzzle piece sort of mystery where in both timelines you're kind of putting together the pieces of what happened and trying to figure it out. Now, I'm not very good at piecing together mysteries. It's just not my thing. My brain doesn't work that way, honestly. So I was surprised by all the twists and turns that took place in this novel, and Stevie was a great character to follow. Really loved her. I found her to be very interesting. The one thing I will say about her is I don't think the romance was necessary, and I guess that's not really a comment on her, but the romance plotline didn't do much for me, didn't care for it, and it kind of came out of nowhere in my opinion, so that was the one downside to it. But overall I felt like it was a sort of Sherlock Holmesy story and super atmospheric. The setting did a lot to add to the atmosphere. I felt like it was just the perfect read for fall. It's also mostly set in fall because, like, you know, beginning of school and everything, so the fall atmosphere just worked for me. All of the characters in the story were very interesting. It's sort of a Breakfast Club thing where each character is defined by one central thing that is what they are known for, but I do wish that the side characters had developed a little bit more. Maybe that's something that we'll get in future books. I know that the second book is already out. The third book is coming out in 2020. I'm not decided yet if I'm going to continue with the series because as much as I really enjoyed this book, I don't know how I felt about the ending. I didn't really like it, honestly. I kind of was meh about it, but overall, as a whole, the story did get a 4 out of 5 stars for me. I'm intrigued by it. I'm just not sure if I'm intrigued enough to continue with the series, but I probably will read the next one next Halloween. It will be kind of an annual tradition until I'm done with the trilogy. Honestly, it was really compelling and readable, so I probably will continue with the series, especially just because of Stevie. I found her to be fascinating. Being brought into her analytical mind and the logic behind it was interesting for me because that's not how my brain works at all. So seeing how she fit the puzzle pieces together kept me going throughout the story. And I'm not into true crime because I'm a chicken and I'm scared of everything, but I can definitely appreciate her background with that. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a solid read. Next, I read Spellbook of the Lost and Found by Moira Fowley-Doyle. This is another book that I had started, and there's actually quite a few on this list. It's because I save all my mysteries and all my like fall vibe books for fall, but then fall like comes and goes before I even know it because I feel like Christmas starts the second that Halloween is over, and I love Christmas and like I'm excited about it, but it also kind of cuts fall short. Like it's November 6th today or 7th or something like that, and I woke up to snow this morning. Like, why? I feel like we don't get fall at all. It's very sad, but that's enough of me whining. So this is a sort of witchy mystery that is set in Ireland, and it follows a bunch of different characters, and they all have lost something. It starts off with Olive and her best friend Rose. They go to this party and they leave it having lost something, and then they meet these mysterious teenagers and become friends with them, and all of them realize that they have been losing things recently and that they have secrets, and as those secrets kind of unfurl, as does does the story. This book is kind of like a magical realism in my opinion. It's not like witches as you know them, but there is this spell book that is used to conjure back lost things, so there's some dabbling in magic, and the atmosphere is what made this story. It's kind of hard to pitch to you because it is such an atmospheric book that you just kind of have to read. The writing style is perfect. Moira Fowley-Doyle has an amazing writing style. She uses a lot of metaphors that just build up this kind of atmospheric, I feel like I've said atmosphere so many times, but like it's this sort of fall mystery aesthetic that just works. Like most of this story is set in the woods, in like creepy cabins and like stuff like that, like kind of backwoods places. And I listened to the audiobook and it was so well done because the narrator is Irish, so it brought me to Ireland and the forests of Ireland. Last time I went to Ireland, it was a very bad experience. Not Ireland's fault, it was entirely mine. I was sick and I hurt my ankle and it was a lot. But this time being in Ireland, it was very cool. So I recommend the audiobook if it is available to you and you can listen to it. Definitely check it out. But this was just a dark and spooky story, perfect for Halloween. I actually read this on a 24-hour fall reading day vlog, so I will link that down below if you guys wanted to go and check that out, but it was perfect for that day. Now, the one thing I will say is there were a lot of characters and I had trouble keeping track of all the characters. I kind of got a lot of them confused. Lots of quirky characters, very different, unique characters, but there's just so many of them and like it was like different groupings, so that kind of got to be a little bit confusing at times, but that might just be a personal preference thing. But all the characters were flawed, which made them very intriguing, and I did like the relationships between them, like within the groups, but also outside of the groups. You had familial relationships, sibling relationships, just friendships building, romantic relationships, and there was a lot of representation in here. You have bisexual and lesbian representation, and that was very well done. And honestly, the characters were perfect for the story. There was just so many of them, and the fact that each of them had a perspective and like each group had their one narrator, it got to be confusing, like as confusing as it is to explain it to you. But if you're looking for a sort of modern day magical witchy-ish story, a perfect book to read on a gloomy, rainy fall day, definitely check this out. Also, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. This is a graphic novel that is set at fall in a pumpkin patch. It is perfect for fall. I also read this on that 24-hour reading day vlog, so I'll link that down below. But it follows Deja and Josiah, who are best friends. They have worked at this pumpkin patch every single year since they started high school, but this is their last time working at the pumpkin patch before they go to college. So Josiah has had a crush on this girl for the longest time, never actually said anything, and Deja encourages him to finally, on his last night working at the pumpkin patch, actually do something about it. So you follow them across the pumpkin patch as they're trying to get to this girl before the end of their shift. I don't have this book anymore, or else I would show you the inside of it because it's beautiful. The art is so gorgeous and the drawing style is honestly what brought me into the story. The color scheme that was used is perfect for fall, just brought me to the pumpkin patch. But I didn't love this book as much as everyone else seems to. I feel like I got what I signed up for with it, a cute, fun fall love story, but I ultimately think that I just didn't have enough plot in my personal preference to carry me through it. So I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars just because I feel like it gave me what I wanted from it, but I just would have preferred a little bit more plot from it. Honestly, it was cute. It was perfect for fall. There just wasn't a lot of substance to it, and I don't feel like it's something that I will remember having read. And I feel like that sounds kind of harsh, but I don't mean it in a mean way. It's just, it was like, okay. Next is These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. So this is bringing witches once again to a modern setting, but not so much a creepy modern day setting, more of just like your average everyday high schooler setting, if that makes sense. So the main character, Hannah, is an elemental witch, so she can control all of the elements. She's living in Salem, Massachusetts, appropriately, but she still has to keep magic a secret. Hannah's also going through a difficult breakup, which is made complicated frustrated by the fact that her ex is a part of her coven, and there are lots of evil witchery things going on. That was a way to say that sentence. And her ex seems to be one of the prime targets, so she has to work with her to try and protect her, but in the meantime, she's also trying to date this new girl, Morgan, who has showed up, and it's just a lot of chaos. This story surprised me by how much I enjoyed it, honestly. It had a lot of unique elements. I loved the fact that it was dealing with a character going through a breakup, and it wasn't like a breakup to get to that relationship again and rekindle that old flame. It was her going through that breakup and going through the process of trying to move on when she's encountering her ex all the time, and she's trying to date this new girl, and Morgan was a great character, so pure, loved her. But the breakup, I enjoyed that. I thought that that was really great because you don't get to see that a lot in YA, and I think it should be more common to see. This book features a lot of representation. There's bi representation, trans representation, and a lesbian main character, so it's awesome on those fronts. And it kind of reminded me of Harry Potter in a way, just because it was like school but also magic, and I don't know how to explain it, but it was more of like a Halloween-y modern Gossip Girl version of Harry Potter. I honestly don't know how to explain it at all. But that being said, this book wasn't all light and fluffy. It did get darker than I was expecting it to. The magic system was really cool. I liked the fact that there were the different kinds of witches, and there was also stigma amongst them in between the different kinds. That was interesting. And the fact that Hannah was a character who wasn't just discovering her powers, she already knew about them and you were just being introduced to them. She was like familiar with them from the start, and that was kind of a nice change because I feel like a lot of times in sort of fantasy books like that, they're just learning about their powers and are like, what? And they're kind of getting over the initial shock of that. But for Hannah, it's just a way of life. She's known she's an elemental witch her entire life, and you're not getting that from this book if that's what you're looking for. But I liked that. Hannah was a really great character. She was sympathetic and very loving, but also could kick ass. She was a really badass character, so she was a pleasure to follow. And Morgan, like I mentioned, was great. I feel like the side characters were also very well developed, and there was good action all around throughout the story. I never really had a moment where I felt like I was bored because there was action going on with the romance, there was action going on with the witchy things, so I feel like I was very entertained the entire time. I will say I kind of saw the ending coming, but that didn't really bug me because I enjoyed the story overall. Once again, not sure if I'm going to continue with the series. I probably will because it ended on kind of a cliffhanger, but overall I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought I had this book on my notes, but apparently I didn't. But I also recently read Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. This book. I'm really sad about this book, I'm not going to lie. So this is witches set in a sort of Victorian France setting. I honestly don't even remember what the time period was exactly, but you follow two characters. One is a witch who has fled from her coven, and the other is a witch hunter, sort of, and they end up having to get married, and chaos is what ensues, obviously. But this book, just like, everyone had loved it. Everyone was raving about it, but I just didn't really get it, to be honest. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars, I believe, because I did enjoy the main character, Lou. I had been expecting a good romance, a steamy romance, but I just didn't really believe it, and the atmosphere of France was cool, but it also, I don't think, reached its full potential. Like, I don't know, this just wasn't for me, and I kind of just wanted to be done with it. I probably would have DNF'd it if it hadn't had so much hype surrounding it, and I'd seen people say like, oh, it's boring for the first little bit, but then it gets better, so then I just kept on going because I was like, it has to get better soon because I so wanted to love this story. I truly did, but unfortunately it just wasn't for me, and I'm very sad about it, I'm not gonna lie, but oh well, they can't all be winners. Next is The Babysitter's Coven by Kate Williams. So our main character, Esme, has a babysitter's club with her best friend. They've been doing it forever. She kind of loves it, kind of doesn't like it, but she also doesn't want to get a real job, so she sticks to babysitting. So enter new girl Cassandra, and Cassandra really wants to join their babysitter's club. That is all she wants to do, and she doesn't really seem like the type to want to do that, so Esme and her best friend are kind of confused, but they're like, sure, you can join. And it turns out that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. So Cassandra found this note from her mother that said, find the babysitters. So that's what she did. She was just following her mother's orders. So Cassandra and Esme discover that being a babysitter is way more than it seems. It actually means that you are protecting not only the kids that you're babysitting, but also the world. I read this a couple of days before Halloween, but honestly, this is like perfect for a day of Halloween read because the climax of the story is set on Halloween and it's witches, but mixed with babysitters. This reminded me a lot of Undead Girl Gang. I will say though, I do kind of get it mixed up with this one. I think it's the similar covers and the sort of similar plotline with witches in a modern day setting in high school and stuff like that, but they are very different stories. I loved the babysitting element. I thought that was so cool, like mixing Babysitter's Club, which I never read the original Babysitter's Club stories, but you kind of have like the purity that kind of brings to mind mixed with a coven and witches and witchcraft and all of that. That was interesting. So this was a story where you have the character is learning about magic alongside the reader. And a lot of people were saying that this is like Buffy. I've never seen Buffy. I'm not really like interested in Buffy, but apparently it's like very much like that with like the teacher mentor, and I don't really know what else about Buffy, but apparently it's very much like Buffy, so if you liked that, you might like this. But overall, this was just a fun book to read. I felt like I was entertained and it was very humorous. I liked the humor that was brought into it. It was easy to read. There were a lot of cliches in it, but like it was shamelessly cliched, so that was cool. I feel like it was cliche for the purpose of being cliche. And you got a mix of the high school drama with witchcraft, and the high school drama at times was a little bit catty and unnecessary, but I do feel like the mix of the two was very well done and made for a fun story. This is a bit at the younger end of YA, so if you're just starting out with YA, I think this would be a great book to check out. And like I said, it's perfect for Halloween. The characters were very quirky and they would like have a theme for what they dressed up as every day, so it was almost like costumes every day, and just overall, definitely a Halloween sort of, I don't know the words for what I'm thinking of. I guess it's like a sort of hocus pocus vibe, but I don't think that's what I'm really trying to say, so I'll just stop. So I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a solid read. Next, really quickly, I wanted to talk about Wilder Girls by Rory Power, which I ended up DNFing, but I don't fault the book on that at all. It's entirely my own fault because so many people were talking about this, and when a book is really hyped up and it seems like something that I'd be interested in, all I really knew about it was that it was kind of similar to Lord of the Flies, but it was gender bent. Like, it's not actually a retelling, but sort of like that. So I was intrigued by it and I was like, yes, I'm gonna pick it up. And I should have read the synopsis ahead of time because it's nasty. Like, there's like a plague sort of disease thing, and I can't read about those things. I'm way too squeamish. I feel like I seem like such a baby in this video, but honestly, I'm too squeamish for that, so couldn't do it. I think I got like 10% of the way through and I was like, no, this is way too much for me. Like, I was listening to the audiobook while driving and I was like gagging because it was disgusting. So not the book's fault at all, entirely mine. I just like to go into books not reading the synopsis so then I don't have a preformed expectation for it, because sometimes that will let me down. But this was a case where I should have read the synopsis. Oops. But for those of you who might be interested in it, this book is set in a school that has been quarantined because there's been this plague. It's kind of a mix of The Maze Runner and a plague, honestly, is what I got from it. So if that sounds like something for you, check it out. Maybe you'll like it. And the final book that I have to talk about is Before the Devil Breaks You by Libba Bray. I finally read this book. I'm so excited about it. This is one where I got like probably 75% of the way through last Halloween, but then Halloween was over, so I was like, well, I need to save this for Halloween, which was dumb because I should have just continued reading it. So I started listening to the audiobook for this on Halloween day, and then I ended up finishing it 5 days later, I think. So that's pretty good because this is a 20-hour audiobook. It's so long. I listened to it at twice the speed and still it was like, yikes, I almost just fell. But this is the third book in the Diviner series. If you haven't read that series yet, go and read it. Just like stop and read it because it's so good. It's a ghosty mystery story that is set in 1920s New York, and the atmosphere of it, oh my god, I just love this series so much, and this book reminded me of how much I loved it because it had been so long since I had read a book in this series, and I was very glad to be back in that world. And just, oh, this is a story that has a lot of characters as well and a lot of perspectives, but I think perspective is utilized, like, it's, as a writer, fascinating to me. And I feel like every single character, I'm so invested in their stories, and each of them has a unique voice, so I don't mind that there are so many characters. The audiobook also does a great job of making those characters distinctive and also bringing you to 1920s New York. The atmosphere of this story is impeccable. Oh my god, it's just so good. Like, so good. This is probably my scare limit though, because they are pretty creepy and can get really scary at times, so I can't do much more than this, but since the series has such like a dear place in my heart, I will put up with being terrified. Now this book in particular, and the whole series really has, but I think this book did the best, if I'm remembering the others correctly, of bringing up some issues that are still prevalent in modern day, such as immigration, racism, domestic abuse, so many things, and making you think about them and realize that they've been around for so long. Libba Bray does a very good job of dealing with complicated issues like that. So in case you couldn't tell, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It's my first 5 out of 5 and I feel like forever, but like, oh my god, it was so good and I'm so ready for King of Crows, which comes out in February, and I'm gonna listen to the audiobook right away. I'm not gonna save it for Halloween. I need to devour it immediately. That was kind of dangerous, but like, I went for it. So those are all the books that I read recently. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Please let me know what you have read recently, and if you have read any of these books, your thoughts on them. And also don't forget to click that subscribe button, then click that bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I post. I post new videos twice a week. I'm getting back into doing reading vlogs for the month of November, so I will definitely have reading vlogs for you every single Monday, which is yay! And then we are getting into Bookmas, so I will have a video every other day in December. We have lots of new content coming for you guys. I don't know why I say we like there's more than one of me. I wish there was, because it would make it easier to do all of this. But thank you guys for watching today's video. Don't forget to check out my social media and stuff and keep up with me there, and I will see you guys in my next video soon. Bye!